DonInLondon, hello. April 12th, my video is all about recovery from addiction to either substance or behaviour. My substance of addiction, alcohol, my behaviour equally could be addictive around people, places and things, being in the right place with the right people with the right things, and trying to fit in, desperately trying to understand what life is all about, or was all about, but it still is about learning what life is all about. And I'll only know more about what life is all about by the end of the day. And in addiction, I was in a problem. I had no idea what the solution was. I tried self-will. Self-will then became self-will run riot, and no amount of willpower that I had exerted on my problem of drinking could stop me. It was as if all controls had been taken away. And it was frustrating for me because as the individual at the centre of this particular storm, other people could see how much I was harming myself. And no matter how much they implored me, and I implored myself as well, there was no way out. At least it seemed that way. What happened? Well, a moment of clarity, well into support from family, friends, community and professionals, and many years of struggle trying to work this one out on my own. No matter what happened, I ought to be able to do this. I should be able to. I can do this. And no amount of cognitive, theoretical reasoning on my part seemed to work. Until I got to a place where it couldn't get any worse, and it could only end in a horrible tragedy for myself, not be here, and also the impact on those people around me who still love me. Madly, for some reason. They didn't do it for mad reasons, they just loved me, and I just couldn't see it. So I needed help, and that was I suppose the moment of clarity. It can't get any worse, and I can't do it on my own, no matter how much I've struggled, and I've tried every cure I can think of. And along came the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, and I was a doubter from the very start, simply because how could people just start to stay sober one day at a time? There had to be some sort of magic, there had to be some sort of intervention which was beyond my ability to perceive. And of course I wasn't a very good going concern by then. I had no understanding of love, of self-love, just enough maybe, or even how to love other people. I lost sight of the truth, and I couldn't hear the wisdom from other people. So it was a bit of a turmoil and a turning point when I said, okay, I surrender. I need to start to learn again, and it's going to be painful, but it can't be any more painful than it's become. And even then, as I started to learn how to be sober one day at a time, the pain was immense, because it was unremitting anxiety, anxiousness and fear. So it took a long time to get comfortable being in the moment of now. And I don't say that to put people off, just to acknowledge it's a struggle for anybody, and it's as hard can be, and there are no shortcuts. There are no shortcuts to getting back to sobriety. It only takes a day, but those early days are very, very difficult. And without fellowship, where people understood what it was like, and sharing their experience of these times, I don't know that I would have made it, because nobody can relate to addiction unless they have the addiction as well. That's what it works. That's how it works. We share experience, strength and hope. But the great news about AA is I don't speak for it, never can, never will. It's just full of unique, authentic people with their own personalities, with their own faiths and their beliefs and their affiliations, which are unique and authentic to them, and those are retained, except maybe membership to a drinking club, because there's no point in going there anymore if we're going to be sober. But we all have to come to those conclusions as individuals with freedom of choice, and that is what fellowship helped me understand, how to get back to freedom of choice. So whilst I don't speak for AA is a big part of my story, and if I didn't share about it, then what would I do? I wouldn't be making these videos, I'd probably be dead. So my sharing of experience, strength and hope is just me as one person, and what I know more than anything else, it is the many voices in the rooms or groups of AA which afford us the opportunity to learn how we can do it as individuals, and on any given day you'll see good stuff and you'll see horror stuff. It's the stuff of life. It's not easy, it's hard. As M. Scott Peck said, life is difficult. And if we accept it's difficult, then we can get on with how we live our lives. So sober one day is all it is. Unique, authentic people with freedom to choose and sharing about it. So the fellowship meetings of AA, what you see is what you get. It's attraction, not promotion. And sometimes we're attracted to those who have ideas and are sober, and sometimes we identify strongly with those who have lost all hope and are just starting all over again. It's life on life's terms. So what we see is what we get. And this is just one voice, my voice. Not good enough. Need the many voices of those who stay sober and those who are trying. So I'll share about AA, this little card, the AA preamble, and inside it's got the 12 steps and 12 traditions, and on the back side it's got, it's equally important, or most important tool of the program, the meditation or serenity prayer. So what is AA? This is not AA, this is just me talking about it. You have to see it for yourself. What you see is what you get. And if you can see it working, that's what you see. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. Does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And primary purpose is to stay sober one day at a time and then share a message. So this is just one person's message, and it's the many people we need to listen to, and I listen to as much as often and as often as I can, to get perspective, wisdom, truth. So where have we got to, or where have I got to this year in the AA step program? Well, I've been covering one step a month, and there are 12 steps. So a gentle reminder where we've got to. January, for me, I talked about step 1, which is we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. And so I fully admit and accept that I do this on a daily basis, step 1, that I am powerless over alcohol, and if I took a drink, life would get unmanageable, because one drink is never enough and 1,000 won't do. Step 2, which I was covering in February, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves, or myself, could restore me or us to sanity. So it came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. So what is that power? Well, I'd have to say the absolute truth of what goes on in the world right now is part of it. The ability to love and be loved back is part of it. And it's the wisdom of other people that helps me keep sober. So my higher power is truth, love and wisdom, and I can happily call that God. I don't have the truth. I can find love and express love, and I can find wisdom and learn it from others. So whatever it happens to be for you, a higher power, anything can do, as long as we're not it. Because if we think we have power over something, it implies that we're in control again. And especially when it comes to alcohol, I don't have power over alcohol. It had power over me, and if I tried to manage or control it again, I think it would just do for me. And then in March, it was all about step 3. Made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. So for me, my higher power can be God, but I'm not sure I could ever define God. It's beyond my wisdom. So I'm always looking for truth, love and wisdom, and I can call that God. So if I made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as I understand him, because it is a personal understanding always in these steps. If I understand God to be truth, love and wisdom, I'm always learning the truth, I'm always learning more about love, and I'm always learning more wisdom. So those 3 steps are the starting point. It just requires a change in outlook, if you like, from having power over alcohol to not having power over alcohol, and that there are powers greater than us with truth, love and wisdom, and we can learn always. And then this month, April, is about step 4. It's the first big action step when it comes to taking action, made a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And the serious point here is to be fearless, a self-appraisal of our assets and liabilities, personality traits and the behaviour, what we got up to find out where our grudge list is, where our anger, where our resentments were about life, which could fuel our drinking because we wanted oblivion or we wanted to feel powerful over the rest of the world. And the whole program is about humility, in the sense of being able to learn life again. So the word humility is not a bad thing. It's the absolute gift of life. When we were young, we never stopped learning. We were like sponges, soaking up information and all that life had to offer. And then drink probably cut us off from our learning. So when we cut off the drink, we start to learn again. And believe you me, when I started, after 35 years of drinking, the learning was fast and furious, and it burned me, and it was painful, because it'd been a long time since I'd given up the idea that I knew everything. And I still don't know anything, or everything. So what helps me on a daily basis when not at meetings? Daily Reflections book, which covers 1 step a month of the 12-step program, as Bill sees it. And I've been picking out readings to do with inventory taking, or sorting out our assets and liabilities. And I have been shown from the 24-hour day book, and sometimes this book is okay. Sometimes it suggests we're back in power, or rather that we are in control, and that's the worst thing for anybody in recovery in some respects. We have freedom of choice around the truth and wisdom of now. Freedom of choice because we're unique and authentic people, but we do understand that truth, love and wisdom, hopefully, is all around us, but we're full of opinion and preferences. So sometimes our preferences are not good for us, or not as good as the truth out there. So we need to keep on learning, and as it's 1 day at a time sober, it can also be 1 day at a time back into the malady or the fear, and then back to relapse. So, we're not perfect. Relapse can happen to anyone, given life situations and circumstances. So there is no gift in shouting from the rooftops, I've got 50 years sober, if we're still rattling and mad with the world, because the program is about serenity, dealing with the good sides of life and the bad sides of life, joy and sadness. It's about dealing with life on life's terms. So a daily reflection is not a bad idea for somebody in recovery, or anybody who has faith will do this as part of their daily prayer and meditation. And even if it's not aimed at God, where some faiths are, or spiritual living is, like Buddhist and others, it's about being at one with now. So for April 12th, it says here in the Daily Reflections, giving up insanity. But we can also be returned or restored to madness quite quickly when we don't like what's happening to us. Giving up insanity. Where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. Yes, because we keep on doing it even when we know it's mad. Alcoholism required me to drink, whether I wanted to or not. Insanity dominated my life and was the essence of my disease. It robbed me of the freedom of choice over drinking and, therefore, robbed me of all other choices. And it's a return to choice, which is important. When I drank, I was unable to make effective choices in any part of my life, and life became unmanageable. This is really step 2. I asked God to help me understand and accept the full meaning of the disease of alcoholism. So, if God is for me truth, love and wisdom. The truth is, I start to understand the full meaning of the disease as I continue in my sobriety. So when I ask for help, please let me access truth, love and wisdom to know that I am an alcoholic in recovery, and this particular addiction is never going away. It will always be with me, and it will chew on my soul if I start to feel like I need to be back in control, or I don't look after my emotional and spiritual well-being. And that's what the program is, emotional and spiritual well-being. Moving on to As Bill Sees It in this book, page 142, and I've said this a couple of times in the last week or so. Page 142, God-given instincts, is the first start of step 4 in the 12 and 12, which I've dropped it, excuse me, this book, 12 steps and 12 traditions. So these are the first paragraphs, if you like. Creation gave us instincts for a purpose. Without them, we wouldn't be complete human beings. If men and women didn't exert themselves to be secure in their persons, made no effort to harvest food or construct shelter, there would be no survival. If they didn't reproduce, the earth wouldn't be populated. If there were no social instinct, there would be no society. Yet these instincts, so necessary for our existence, often far exceed their proper functions. Powerfully, blindly, many times subtly, they drive us, dominate us, and insist upon ruling our lives. We tried to shape a sane ideal for our future sex life. We subjected each relation to this test. Was it selfish or not? We asked God to mould our ideals and help us to live up to them. We remembered always that our sex powers were God-given and therefore good, neither to be used lightly or selfishly, nor to be despised and loathed. And I was watching a program about the holiday industry in the UK in the 80s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and it was all about sun, sea and sex, basically, for me, because I was a single person. So I always went on singular type holidays hoping for romance and happiness and fun. So to an extent those things did happen, but they were not felt on a deep emotional level, and I guess I was throwing myself away just as much as I maybe have thrown other people away into that place of superficiality and indifference, which is all about feeling good in the moment without consequences. But there are consequences to those sorts of ways of living, and that's singularity in one's more mature years, or being with the wrong person in the wrong place all of the time, because our decisions were made based on superficial and indifferent feelings and thoughts. So these days, understanding how to find truth, love and wisdom, real love, which is unconditional love for other people, and also learning how to love myself enough that I can do those things, means that some of the values that were adopted in my youth and went on far too long kept me single, because I feared being found out, feared not being good enough, feared the commitment, all those things, because it meant something was going to be more solid. And although I might have craved that solidity, it also made me fearful, because it meant I had to put my trust in other people. And of course, as an alcoholic, I related to other people, or especially women, who drank like me, and probably felt as lonely, and also, as life went on, found it quite difficult, and didn't know the way out. So the AA program has taught me some new sets of values, which doesn't make me a prude, and it doesn't make me overly zealous around anything. What it says is, where's the balance in this relationship? Where's the balance in life? Can I love another human being, or another woman, and be able to be loved back by that woman? That sounds very condescending, but it's not meant to be. It's just about being equal and having the freedom to feel the fear and do it anyway, and explore life, but do it with care, due care and attention, and cherish people rather than be superficial and indifferent like I was to myself which then open the door to all the horrors of being that way with others. And when I look back, I do cringe from time to time because of my behaviour. And I wasn't worth knowing, in my own opinion, these days, some of the time, because I was quite driven mad by all the things that go with addiction. So it's good to be out of that. But of course, finance and romance are the major things that will always torment us, because if we think we need more of something, then we won't get it, because we're becoming very needy and then starting to want rather than be ourselves. Because we can try and bend ourselves to fit what we think we ought to be. And the great news in sobriety is we get freedom of choice to find out who we are. More so by the end of today. Anyway, 24-hour day book, this one very briefly. Thought for the day. This sober world is a pleasant place for an alcoholic to live in. Once you've got out of your alcoholic fog, you find that the world looks good. And it takes time for this to happen. It's not an overnight success, although it seems so in some cases. You find real friends in AA, you get a job, you feel good in the morning, you eat a good breakfast, and you do a good day's work at home or outside. And your family loves you and welcomes you because you're sober. Am I convinced that this sober world is a pleasant place for an alcoholic to live in? Well, yes, if you have all those accoutrements. But for those of us who don't have immediate family, which we made, or got married, actually life is pretty good, because we have fellowship, we have friends, we have community, we have whatever remnants of family are left who may speak to us still. Because don't forget, we face our consequences, and if we've hurt people a lot, it can be quite difficult. We learn life, and life can be good, but it's life on life's terms. So we can have freedoms around our life choices, given the life experience we've got. And sometimes it's harsh, and sometimes it's not. It's as life is. What a wonderful thing to be back on track just for a day. But it's young in the day right now, so goodness knows what might happen. Anyway, whatever happens, in the moment of now, or in the next few hours, that serenity prayer will always help me. And it's to the God of your understanding, or to simply good conscience, or asking the dog next door to quieten down a bit. It's called Wobble. Its owner uses very coarse language, and she has a lot to say about her dog, and I don't think the dog likes it. Anyway, serenity, because I'm smiling, even though the dog's barking, and the dog's called Wobble. If I were called Wobble, I'd wobble. Anyway, yes, the serenity prayer. Life is funny. The serenity prayer to God or good conscience. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, for me, is just for today, and often only in the moment of now. Not to be upset, because life is as life is. Substance, alcohol, made me an alcoholic, or rather I made myself an alcoholic in the process of drinking, from joyful conviviality drinking to dependent drinking to addictive drinking, and I don't know whether stages started or stopped. All I know is at the end I was a 24/7 drinker, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Wake up, drink, feel ill, drink more, feel okay, drink more, sleep, oblivion, covering up, fear. So these days, one day at a time, I just don't drink, and it's not a matter of self-will, it's just a preference and a choice I can make on a daily basis, because my head's a little bit clearer than it used to be. So if it wasn't drinking, all the other activities of life would go to the same ridiculous or addictive proportions. Work, relationships, collecting, materialism, everything that modern day life suggests we might enjoy and want more of. So these days I look at what I need on a daily basis. What I need most of all is sobriety, so I can understand how I'm feeling and have a connection to the reality of now. and that converts into emotional and spiritual well-being for me. So if I know what my feelings are, whether I'm happy or sad, tired out as I feel this morning, it's reality, and reality is spiritual. It's the absolute connection to living we can do and what we can't do, and that's what recovery for me is all about. So what helped me get to where I am today? Well, I didn't do it on my own. Left to my own devices, I was locked up in a small basement flat for a while. Couldn't open the curtains, couldn't answer the telephone, couldn't answer the front door, couldn't open the post which told me it was time to leave that horrible place, go somewhere else, and then find myself homeless. That's where it took me, and it took a long time to actually deal with my own situation, that is, being able to see what my part in my life was rather than blame anybody else. And nowadays what keeps me sober and helps me is a fellowship, and that fellowship is Alcoholics Anonymous. Don't speak for it, never can, never will, never want to, but for me to exclude the impact of fellowship, the fellowship of AA, in my story and sharing experience, strength and hope would for me be an ego trip. It would say to others, well, the man did it on his own, and this man did not do it on his own. What he found was, in fellowship, I'm equal to other people, no bigger, no smaller, just right sized, the size I can be today, and I know no better, no worse what is right for me than anybody else. So what has helped me? The fellowship, 12 steps of action to change my attitude and behaviour on a daily basis. But I will share the AA preamble here, the statement of intent for anybody intending to give it a try, sobriety that is, and fellowship may be part of your story as you go along. You either love it, hate it, or live with it. Don't lump it. We can always go back to drinking, or go back to some other form where we can find sobriety, because there are other ways. But AA works for me, so I share it as part of it is the backbone of my recovery. And so the statement of intent about what AA is, or the AA preamble, goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. So no matter what your politics or your religion, you're entitled to keep a hold of everything you believe in which is right for you. The only reason for going to AA is a desire to stop drinking and be sober, and then share experience, strength and hope. So we don't exclude other people's ideas and thoughts and understandings. We just talk about what is making life possible sober today as much as possible. But there will be times when people share what works in terms of their political or faith affiliations. That's life. That's how life is. How else would we learn how other people live? So we remain unique and authentic, and that's the gift. And I want to remain unique and authentic. At the same time, I need 12 steps or principles of living which help me keep sober, so I understand my emotions and my spiritual connections now. And it's okay to be me, whether I'm happy or sad. It's just the way it is. So I share daily reflections here, this book, AA Fellowship, written 1 page a day to help us with our 12 steps, and each month is one of the steps. And so April is step 4, all about doing a fearless moral inventory of ourselves. And it's most important that we understand that it is for our own use, this 12-step program, 12 principles, because it helps us with our self-awareness, just our own self-awareness. It's not meant for anybody else, it's about our personal conduct. And for yesterday, because I read it out the wrong way round, so I'll read what was yesterday is today. It talks about a word to drop, blame. To see how erratic emotions victimized us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but slowly in ourselves. First of all, we had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures were painful and humiliating. Defects of character, so-called fear, brave-facing, ego, to extremes. We need all of those things, but not at extremes all the time. Where other people were concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and thought. And he goes on to say, when I did my fourth step, that's the fearless moral inventory, following the big book guidelines, which are very simple, I noticed that my grudge list was filled with my prejudices and my blaming others for my not being able to succeed and to live up to my potential. I also discovered I felt different because I was black. As I continued to work on the step, I learned that I always had drunk to rid myself of those feelings. It was only when I sobered up and worked on my inventory that I could no longer blame anyone. And it's how we are with life. It's whether we blame others for our situation or we just understand that life is this way, and how do we deal with it. And in the 12 by 12, this book, something stood out for me today. First off, they can be told that the majority of AA members have suffered severely from self-justification during their drinking days. Well, I did. Always had an excuse for why. For most of us, self-justification was the maker of excuses, of course for drinking, and for all kinds of crazy and damaging conduct. We had made the invention of alibis a fine art. We had to drink because times were hard, or times were good. We had to drink because at home we were smothered with love, or got none at all. We had to drink because at work we were great successes or dismal failures. We had to drink because our nation had won a war or lost a peace. And so it went on, ad infinitum. And what it tells me is, the personal inventory is for us to understand our part in our lives, not the part of life on us, or blame others for where we are. And similarly, our conduct, we become good at and expert at looking at ourselves, but if we apply the principles to other people and start taking inventory of others, it is completely destructive, because we're judging the world as we need only judge our own personal conduct. And when this happens, the Serenity Prayer helps me. To God or good conscience, as we understand, and works for us. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference, hopefully, is just for today. Or addiction to both substance and behaviour. My substance, alcohol, my behaviour at the extremes, trying to be perfect often and never so, never ever perfect, but I had a good go at trying because I thought that's what I needed to do. So striving beyond the pale often. And these days what helps me get some balance back into my life is A, being in recovery, and B, fellowship, and C, working at it just simply for one day. And whoever would have said to me that you can solve all your problems in one day, I would have laughed at them and thought, well, maybe they're being a bit too optimistic. But you know what? Being a perfectionist, I thought you probably could. So these days I realise that it's only progress that we make, and we're never perfect. And that, you know, I suppose there is no end to learning. And that's the real gift of sobriety for me, and being out of the addiction and into recovery. So my life, how it used to be, isolated, alone, excluded, these days more included, more a part of, and included. So what else have I learned? You know, it's very difficult to maintain sobriety without some help. So the gift for me, I have professional help and fellowship help to get me into a program of one day at a time, being included, part of, and not going back into my old addictions and old behaviour. So the fellowship of AA, Alcoholics Anonymous, has been very, very much a part of my life in the last few years, and it helps me maintain a sober life. Some people go for a while and find it doesn't work. Some people go for a while and find it does work, and they don't need it anymore. And some people like to hang around because we just meet great people, and we give something back sometimes by just sharing a message of experience, strength and hope. And also people who don't go to AA but still have recovery, they also share their experience, strength and hope. So there are many ways to make life work, and for as many ways there are to make life work, there are probably that many human beings in recovery. So we just do our best on a daily basis. But I like the fellowship of AA. It helps me recalibrate my life daily. And when I go to meetings, a preamble is shared which explains what the fellowship is all about. I never speak for the fellowship. The fellowship just exists with people in recovery. It's not something special. Well, actually it is something extra special, but the only reason why is it's full of people, just ordinary human beings being in recovery one day only. And some have done it for decades and some have done it for a day. We're both as important wherever we are in the fellowship and our path of recovery, one day long. That's all it is. Anyway, the preamble shared at every meeting goes like this. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problem and help others to recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supporting through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution, does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. And I went to a meeting last night which there were great reminders about what it is. The meeting is called Courage to Change, just change, and it's a daily basis thing. But one of the things that we all learn very early on is that the fellowship provides sanctuary, a sanctuary where we can find the truth of now. And once we access the truth, which is, if we're sober, life can work, rather than being, I suppose, in the malady, in the problem, where we can't make life work at all. It is so much easier to get along. So that meeting was really critical, and somebody shared, and then a newcomer shared, all about what it's like to go back into the malady and the problem, and why did they do that. And it had a lot to do with low self-esteem, not being able to cope, and also, I suppose, being undermined by external forces. And what those people kept on saying most emphatically was, lean on the fellowship hard, then sobriety is there, and then the rest of life can work. So sobriety comes first, and then the rest of life can happen. It means that we have our full range of emotions as they are, rather than wondering at the extremes of feeling, whether we're included or excluded. And what helps me along the way also is the literature, and in the daily reflections, each month it covers one of the 12 action steps of the program. So it's like a daily reminder in April, all about step 4, which is about doing a fearless moral inventory, our assets and liabilities, focusing on the liabilities mostly around how to get sober and stop being in the problem. And the other book I use quite often on this YouTube video, or wherever I put them up, is As Bill Sees It, again a daily reading or more if you need it. And one of the things in fellowship we learn is you can restart your day at any time and realise you've got yourself back into the problem, not drinking necessarily, but behaviour associated with it, which is isolation and exclusion, anger and resentment. And the number one offenders for going back to the problem is resentment, followed by anger or rage. And these days, if we keep on responding to life rather than reacting to it, we have a better chance. So when I ask myself in the morning, how am I feeling? Why? What can I do? It's asserting I have feelings. Why? Today I'm okay, but if I were in pain, the best thing I can do is to get into company which understands what my problem is. So moving from exclusion and isolation into inclusion and being a part of is so much more of a message, I guess, of recovery. So, daily reflections for today, April 11th. A word to drop, blame. To see how erratic emotions victimised us often took a long time. We could perceive them quickly in others, but only slowly in ourselves. First of all, we had to admit that we had many of these defects, even though such disclosures were painful and humiliating. Where other people are concerned, we had to drop the word blame from our speech and our thoughts. When I did my fourth step, following the Big Book guidelines, I noticed that my grudge list was filled with my prejudices and my blaming others for my not being able to succeed and live up to my potential. I also discovered I felt different because I was black. As I continued to work on the step, I learned that I always had drunk to rid myself of those feelings. It was only when I sobered up and worked on my inventory that I could no longer blame anyone. And you know, I could blame all sorts of things in my past. I think one of the hardest prejudices that anybody must face is that there is prejudice against just about anybody and anything from some people in some quarters, and the only way to actually overcome it is to have a sense of self-esteem, confidence built on the foundation of being okay. It's okay to be me, regardless of race, colour or creed. And to stop blaming, because if we're forever blaming others, we're stuck in the problem and not into the solution. That sounds very trite, and I'm trying not to be trite, because, you know, believe you me, we all have stigmas about various things to do with ourselves, our appearance and our outlook, our attitudes and our behaviour. And why are we not understood? And why don't they understand me? And the absolute truth is, if I understood myself better and what I can do, moving into a solution, then I have a better opportunity. It will never be fair, in the sense that some people get the breaks and some people don't. Some of us just have to keep working a day at a time and be content with where we are, maybe, as best we can. And as Bill sees it, this one, page 75, it's all about losing financial fears, but I also realise I'm running out of time. I feel okay this morning. That's the most important thing for me. Why? Because I have a plan. I plan to go to a meeting and make tea, and to be a part of something, and to share experience, strength and hope. And I'm going to do that at lunchtime, and then I've got a lunch date, which is great, and then the rest of the day we'll see how we go. It's all about empathy. How are we feeling? Why? And what can we do? So when I say the serenity prayer to myself each morning as part of my meditation, God, or good conscience, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Gives me a realistic approach just for one day at a time. Nice day to start. Anyway, this is all about AA. Alcoholics Anonymous is a fellowship of men and women who share their experience, strength and hope with each other, that they may solve their common problems and recover from alcoholism. The only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. There are no dues or fees for AA membership. We are self-supported through our own contributions. AA is not allied with any sect, denomination, politics, organisation or institution. It does not wish to engage in any controversy, neither endorses nor opposes any causes. Our primary purpose is to stay sober and help other alcoholics to achieve sobriety. I can just barely read that with these specs, which are my mid-range ones, and that's because my blood sugars are up too high still. And that's all about diabetes and type 1. And even though this affliction is making life very difficult at the moment, I'm getting about gently on the bicycle. And one of the side effects of this is problems with my walking and the pain caused by the neuropathy. And neuropathy isn't just in my feet, it's in my legs, my arms and my hands, so it does affect me overall. However, I still feel it's good to get on with life. And I was just thinking about some very terse comments left in one of my comments boxes, and you know, everybody's entitled to their point of view of how to keep a day working well for them, and I've been learning over the last few years what it's like not to drink alcohol and get my life back. So yes, I did lose my life to drink. Drinking was all there was left at the end, after trying to make it all work and put on a brave face, make sure it looked all right, kept everybody away from the inside me where I could be hurt. And of course, if we do that for too long, we become isolated, we break down, and we keep on doing those things which are harmful, which shut the world out and what it's about, because we just don't know how to handle it anymore. And the most important thing is if you're not an alcoholic, why should you understand this? And for those who have commentary on what it's like either to be an alcoholic or not to be one, for those who are not one, good, don't read this, don't hear this, don't look at it. For those who are looking for recovery and a gentle way forward, then I'm telling my story. And it's just my story, it's not AA's story, and it's not something I do on behalf of AA. I do this for me and my recovery as much as I do it for sharing a journey. So it's not so much about ego, it's about being confident about life working again. And the complication we have as we go along in recovery is we're just normal human beings, and we get other things wrong with us, like diabetes, and we get other diagnoses, maybe like clinical depression, or cancer, or any of the other things which affect normal human beings who are growing up and growing older. So it's 6 and 2 threes. There's good and bad in living, and that's just the way it is. So for those who've got harsh comments about AA, take it up with anyone you can find who is a leader of AA, and unfortunately you can't find one, because there are none. There are no leaders in AA, even if some people think they are, they're not. So they may be custodians or old-timers or people working service for the good of the fellowship, and the fellowship is about not drinking one day at a time. So if you're looking for some secret society, there ain't one, or if there is, I haven't found it yet. So there we go. I want to read a bit from Eckhart Tolle's book about the power of now, or practicing the power of now. Now, I haven't got very far with this book, but, and the big but is I seem to be falling into reading it because it actually supports what I've come to understand about living. And it goes on here, page 23. The present moment holds the key to liberation, but you cannot find the present moment as long as you're in your mind. Enlightenment means rising above thought. In the enlightened state, you still use your thinking mind when needed, but in a much more focused and effective way than before. You use it mostly for practical purposes, but you are free of the involuntary internal dialogue, and there is inner stillness. When you do use your mind, and particularly when a creative solution is needed, you oscillate every few minutes or so between thought and stillness, between mind and no mind. No mind is consciousness without thought. Only in that way is it possible to think creatively, because only in that way does thought have any real power. Thought alone, when it is no longer connected with the much vaster realm of consciousness, quickly becomes barren, insane, and destructive. And that's what a self-obsessed mind does when it's drinking. And, obsessive thoughts, not being able to get out of whatever it is. And that book was written in relation to somebody who had depression for a long time and wanted to work out how to get out of it, how to get a bit of enlightenment and make life work again. And the only answer is we can only make this one day, this present moment, the ever-present moment now, work well for us if we jettison most of what our thinking or our unstable, obsessed thinking is doing, and moving on to more creative and enlightened ways of looking at the world and the bigger picture. So I sort of understand it a bit, and it's only taken me 50 years to get there. Anyway, this book, Daily Reflections, written and produced by AA for AA people, is for step 4 in April, because it's the 4th month and the 4th step, which is the Fear Less Moral Inventory. And it says for April 12th, giving up insanity. Where alcohol has been involved, we have been strangely insane. Alcoholics Anonymous, page 38. Alcoholism required me to drink, whether I wanted to or not. Insanity dominated my life and was the essence of my disease. It robbed me of the freedom of choice over drinking, and therefore robbed me of all other choices. When I drank, I was unable to make effective choices in any part of my life, and life became unmanageable. I asked God to help me understand and accept the full meaning of the disease of alcoholism. And isn't that so true? If we're obsessed by food, by drink, by anything, we can't think of anything else, and we lose sight of the bigger picture. And sometimes what we're doing is destroying the day and not making it so we can either find joy or sadness as it happens. We're just stuck in some sort of dreadful circular torment. Anyway, page 130 from As Bill Sees It, one of the co-founders. Our problem centred in the mind. We know that as long as the alcoholic keeps away from drink, he usually reacts much like other men, just being normal. We are equally positive that once he takes alcohol, whatever into his system, something happens in both the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this. These observations would be academic and pointless if our friend never took the first drink, thereby setting the terrible cycle in motion. Therefore, the main problem of the alcoholic centres in the mind rather than in the body. And once we can get over the physical dependence and the cravings, we have a stab at the emotional side and the spiritual side. So I don't know any alcoholic who hasn't got some emotional problems or whatever. I mean, why did we drink in the first place if life was so wonderful? And this one, 24 hours a day, April the 12th. This one is not authorised by AA, and it's written by an AA person, so who knows? I don't know who authorises or doesn't authorise. Anyway, this sober world is a pleasant place for an alcoholic to live in. Once you've got out of your alcoholic fog, you find that the world looks good. You find real friends in AA, you get a job, you feel good in the morning. You eat a good breakfast and you do a good day's work at home or outside. And your family loves you and welcomes you because you're sober. Am I convinced that this sober world is a pleasant place for an alcoholic to live in? Well, just like normal people, we have our ups and downs. And I was desperately trying to work out how AA is a cult. And I still haven't found the answer yet. But you see, the answer lies in the obsessed thoughts of being put into control, or somebody controlling you. And the beauty of the program is to give freedom of choice back. So it's hard for me sometimes to understand why people rail against it. I think what they're railing against is the injustice of being an alcoholic in the first place, and then finding that they need help and support to sort it out. Because what is the most obvious characteristics of drunks and alcoholics? Stubborn, defiant, putting on a brave face, keeping the world out. And the answer is in doing exactly the opposite. So there you go. We can make a cult of anything if we really try hard enough, but I haven't been able to yet with AA.